Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
How you doing, Dad?
I'm well, Steve. How are you doing? Your end?
I'm good. It's the opposite of what it's been in the past in here, in that it's boiling hot. I'm roasting in here today. It's like a sauna.
Don't complain. Don't complain. It'll change next week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I won't. I won't. The sun's out. It's really lovely. Really, really. It's been a
Beautiful.
really lovely day.
Beautiful. Lovely.
So, yeah, it's just very warm in here. Um, but yeah, things are good for you. You had a good week.
We've had a good week, yes. Once again, I keep on about it for months and months and months. We've still got more work being done. Little small things, but they're mounting up. But the end of next week should see the bulk of it done. It'll just be some bits and pieces. We look forward to that. But we've had quite an extensive work on the ground floor. It's almost completely changed from, and it's quite a big area. My old
Mm.
gallery, as people would never remember. Well, some people would maybe see. Some people that have followed me and visited me here would know what it's like. But there's a lot of alterations, and as you know, it's looking pretty good now, and very nice. So it's worth it.
Excellent. I have to find pictures of the gallery, or find something for context so people can see the inside of the gallery space, what it used to look like.
Do you know? I'll have a look, but I don't think I have. I've got some old VHS clips of it, but that's no good. We can't play them anymore. But no, I don't think I have. If I
Can
find
you?
it, it'll be nice to put it up.
Yeah, we'll
But
see what we can find. See what we can find. Um, Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's nice to see it getting closer to the finish line of that
mm,
project.
mm, mm.
Um, yeah, very much so. Um, okay, so this week we've got a few things to discuss. Lots of questions and comments have come in this week, so we're going to dive into some of your questions, and Dad's going to offer some advice. So, the first one we're going to talk about is a picture that came from Jeff. Jeff is one of our members, and he was presented with a picture to do for a client of a bulldog. So I'm going to flash up the reference photo that Jeff sent us on screen now, so you can all see. Um,
Mhm.
and Jeff was asking that he was a bit concerned and struggling with what colours to pick for this picture, and that's because his first impressions were that it was whites and series of browns, but then the sun came out, took another picture, and now there's different colours that he's seeing. There's greys, there's blacks, and so Jeff asks, "Can Colin advise me what is the best light to find the correct colour, as it always seems to change?" And so I imagine this is a problem for a lot of other people. So I thought we'd take
Yeah.
this opportunity to discuss it and see also what you see in this picture, what colours you see as well, Dad, as we've got it up on screen.
Well, um, ideally, you want to be outside, not inside. You've got to have the light source. Now, that's not necessarily the sun. The sun bleaches out, and you find if you take pictures in a very well lit area, you'll find there'll be a lot more shadow. So the best time to take it is, or the best lighting to take it is when it's not overcast but not sunny, cloudy but not sunny but bright. Okay, and you want to work on level with the animal. You want to get down. You can't take it from above. Get level with the animal, so you get it full on. And if you can, three-quarter angle to the light source.
So this actual picture, in terms of its angle and its level, is actually perfect.
You've got things to remember. Really, is lighting, no sunlight if you can avoid it, and get down so that you're on level playing field with the animal rather than taking it from above. You've got to work on the like a 3/4 angle if you can, because you get the best. But it's not a profile, but that would be the area. In fact, the picture that you're going to put on the screen, the angle of that is great, and but you've got quite a lot of shadow in this one. So this was taken indoors, and this is what you get. Sometimes you haven't got any choice, but that's what I would always recommend. Now that's in an ideal situation. Unfortunately, it's very rare that you can have an ideal situation, so you've got to do the best you can. Now the picture you sent me, which you probably put on the screen there, is a good picture. The only thing I would say about it is you can't see the eyes terribly well, and that's because you've got the shadow there. But if you had no other picture, then you could use that. Now, it may not be the right colour, and this is the problem that Jeff, I think, is looking at. If you change the colour, say you were looking at this picture and say, I love the pose, I can cope with it, and I'm going to do it the same as this. However, I'm going to change the colours. You can't do that. If you start changing the colours, you've got to change all the colours, and that becomes a nightmare. So the best thing to do, if you're stuck with this one picture, do it as you see it. Don't try and be clever. It won't work. But if you can get a picture outside with the same angle as you got that, and 3/4 angle to the light source, then should get a correct colours.
Yeah,
I hope it
absolutely.
makes sense.
It does. It does make sense because one of our cats, Socks, he is black and white. You see, he's very sort of brownish black fur and white. But in the color, in the sunlight, bright sunlight, he looks ginger. Like the dark fur looks very orange, and so if you took a picture of Socks in those kinds of conditions, the total color palette would be completely different to choose from if it was not direct sunlight, bright sunlight on him. So animals, especially the colouring of the fur, I imagine just drastically shifts in bright sunlight. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. Especially a lot of our listeners, a lot of our students are pet portrait artists, and they love their pets. So yeah, good bit of advice there. Lovely. Well, thanks, Jeff, for sending that over. Let's move on to the next one. So I don't have the name here, so apologies. But the question was, can I ask, how do you know which pencil will be the exact right one before you start a particular part of a picture? So how do you know which pencils are going to be the exact colour you need, Dad?
It's experience, Steve. Simple as that. If you've done a lot of artwork, and especially the pastel pencil artwork, you're very familiar with the colours, and you can usually work them out. The difficulty, of course, is if you're looking at a particular colour on the photographic reference, you can't just find that colour. You've got to make the colour up, and you've got to put, as we were talking last week, we've got to put base colours in. So you've got to know what base colours to use to create the right ultimate colour. As you can see, it's pretty tricky. But I can tell you what I do, and when I'm looking at pictures, because every single time, the hundreds and hundreds of pictures that I've done, it's the same situation. What colours do I use? Now, you've got a routine. Well, the routine I have is I have the best photographic reference I can get or have, and that's alongside me. Then I get my pencils out, and I usually start with the Faber pencils because I prefer the Faber as base colours and ground colours. I start with them. I get all of those out. I put them all out, and I go through them a few at a time. and I'm looking at the different parts of the picture, maybe the fur, the eyes, the ears, depending on the animal. And each area I look at in turn. Generally speaking, I would look at the general overall fur or hair to start with, before I even get to the eyes and the other areas. And I find the colours that I know will eventually lead to the colour that I'm looking for. But that, as I said, you have to look at the base colours, and this is where I said experience comes in. When you're looking at it and you think, oh, what do you know? It's a very dark grey. Maybe it's a German Shepherd or a Border Collie. They've got very dark grey, black fur. You would use greys, not very light greys, but you'd use medium greys to work towards the black or very dark grey. But you can't, if you put a medium grey on, you've got to have colours in between that too. So you've got maybe a series of 3 or 4 colours you've got to put on, starting with your base colour and ending up with the final colour that you're looking for. So you can see it's not a simple question to answer. But this is how I do it. I go through my pencils, and my experience tells me, if I use that and I use that. Now, the other thing you've got to remember when you do this is, even if you go through all the pencils you've got, and I've got 4 different makes, and I go through all of them, it's still maybe not going to end up exact the colour that you want. So you've got to put a little compromise in. But once you've got those base colours, especially if it's the fur, those colours that you've chosen will also apply to the eyes, the ears and other parts. I mean, I'm not saying you put black eyes in, I'm talking about the colour balance that you've got. So if you're looking at a grey animal or greys, then, and the eyes, say, is a ochre, then you've got to look at the ochre independent of the fur. But this is where skill comes in and experience comes in. You've got to know what colours those eye colours, the ochres, would work best with the fur colours you've already decided upon. You understand that? I mean, the worst scenario is you're working on earth greys. Let's say you are working on earth greys for the majority of the fur. And then you think, oh no, I think I'll use bluey greys, cool greys for the eye. That wouldn't work because you're clashing then in tonal value. So you've got to be very careful there. But you know, I think there's no easy answer, and there isn't really a perfect solution. I wish there was. But with pastel pencils, I think you've got a better chance of getting it right than you have, say, with watercolour or oil, because in those cases you've got to mix colours together to achieve the results. But with pastel pencils, you've got the colours there and they're constant. So you shouldn't have
true.
too much
That's
trouble.
true. This is the thing, isn't it? And this is why there is such depth to pastel pencil work. This is why there's so much more subtlety. It's not paint by numbers. It's paint by a series of numbers that get you to that eventual colour. But this is why I think it's quite hard to explain theoretically without showing this. It's why the courses, and we recommend people to follow the courses to get that understanding of how to build colours and learn as many combinations through the courses as possible, because every picture is different and there's hundreds of different combinations that may get you to that particular colour. So it's learning all the keys to the build up
I
through
tell you what
different.
might help, the picture that you've got on the screen of the ball. Let's assume for the moment that Jeff wants to do and decides to do this picture, okay? Now, if you look at the browny, blacky, grey colours for the top of the head, you know, that browny fur, what colour would you use for that? Now, straight away, when I look at that, it's earth colours. Straight away, whatever colours I put on, I wouldn't be looking at the bluey greys, for instance. They're gone. I'd be looking at the earth greys. So the 270, which is a light grey, and then the 273, then 175. Don't be tempted there with, say, 181, because that won't work, because you're clashing then in tonal value. So 175. And then, because 175 is a earth colour, we'll go with the greys I've mentioned, but you've also got another colour, you've got brown. You've got to put the brown in. Now, brown, again, there are different tones of brown, but the brown that would come immediately to mind here will be 177, which is kind of, I mean, most browns are earthy colours, but sometimes you get them a bit ochre-y, and that's another colour that I would use. Now, this is, obviously you've got the white as well, into the mix of that. And then you've got black. Black doesn't matter, white doesn't matter, because that will go with anything. It's only those colours where you have a tonal difference. So I hope that helps. Now, if you drop down to the face, you've got, again, I would stick to those colours I've said, 270, 273. And then you've got the pinks. Now, the pinks would work really well with those colours. And if, for instance, you had the bluey greys, not in this case, but if you did have, that would also work. Pink would also work with that too. So you see what I mean? What I'm telling you now is from experience. Looking at that immediately, I can see it. But if you think, well, I can see, if you look at the lower down level with the mouth, it's got a bluey hue to it, hasn't it? You can just see a bluey hue. Now that clashes with the colour on the top, where I've just told you that you want to use the earth colours. I wouldn't be tempted to put those bluey colours in, 230, 233 for instance. I wouldn't be tempted to do that. I would stick to those original colours I told you.
Interesting, really
I
interesting.
hope that is interesting, because it's the way I work, and sometimes I get very complicated, and I do try to explain to people when I'm doing the videos why I'm using this. But as I said, you've got to look at the artistic license in the end.
Yeah, it's really tricky and interesting, and yeah, I think it's easy to hear you talk about these things because you have that experience to draw upon, and so that's maybe why some people think that they can also, you know, well, I don't know if that's the case, but it's certainly just finding those colours and going to those colours. It takes time. It takes experience and learning through practicing, and following the courses, and trying as many colour build-ups as possible. And also, you know, you can, obviously we recommend doing the classes to understand those build-ups, but if you do want to try something out, you always say on spare paper, if you just try a colour combination out, you can try different variations to get to the colour that you need to. Once you understand the fundamentals of the base colour system that you have with achieving the end result, then that formula, sub in the colours and see where you get, you know, see what end result you get. But anyway, I think that's definitely covered the question. So thank you very much for sending that in. I'm going to move on because we've got one from Judith, and Judith asks, hello, is your ombre paper suitable for coloured pencil work?
Well, you can use coloured pencils on any paper, Steve. I wouldn't personally use coloured pencils on ombre. You could, And there's no reason why you can't, but I wouldn't do it. The reason I wouldn't do it, you've got a ridge, and it's very hard. With pastel, you can fill that up quite easily with the pastel, but with coloured pencils, it will leave marks, and it's very hard to actually keep applying the coloured pencil, so I wouldn't use it. What I would use is watercolour paper, is ideal, especially if you've got the thicker kind. And well, I say the thicker kind, I wouldn't use, what's that, Bockingford? It's got little pimples in it. That won't work either, because you're in the same situation you are with the ombre. So I would use smoothish watercolour paper or cartridge paper, but there are papers specifically designed for coloured pencils. But what I use, as you know, is the Pastelmat. That really works well. Now, people straight away would say, hang on, you've got to fill the Pastelmat up. Well, you do, of course you do, but you haven't got the ridges, that texture running through it. Pastelmat is clear, and all my coloured pencil work, certainly in the last couple of years, has been on the light grey Pastelmat. I'd use light grey. You could use white. No reason why not, but the light grey works really well.
Just going back to the watercolour choice that you had, I believe it was botanical smooth was the term that our paper was given, a botanical smooth. So it did have a kind of sort of texture to it. But as you say, Pastelmat really is the number one choice for you.
That's what I would use, because the reason I prefer that is because it takes water. No, not water, sorry.
A solvent.
The solvent, yeah.
Yeah, thicker as well.
Too, but the solvent really well. And I must do some more of them. I haven't done them for a long time.
Lovely, excellent. Well, thank you for the question. Moving on, so this we'll end on this one today because it just touched upon what we were talking about. I think last week. The weeks blend into each other now, but we had a question regarding your exhibition that you had in Gravesend in 1982, and specifically more about where that was. So, what else can you remember of that time, Dad?
Well, the chap was called Tony Blackman. It was a Blackman art gallery, and it was on the, if people know Gravesend, the clock tower is very famous, the clock tower, and there's a crescent around it, not all the way round, halfway round, and it's in the crescent. It was a shop in that crescent. And if people did know Gravesend, it's the opposite crescent to Nottens. Nottens, okay?
Nottens.
That means,
okay.
Meanings to nobody, but yes, Nottens. It occupied the other, so it was opposite then, on the other side. And it's quite a small gallery. I think it was only one floor. I only ever dealt with one floor. I don't know whether Tony probably did the framing there, so he must have had another area. But that's where I went, and that's where I exhibited the pictures.
Brilliant. And people may remember going back 10 years now when we started this podcast and talking about your start in your art journey. Tony was a massive help to you and a massive encouragement to you when you were first starting out.
I don't think I could have done it without him. He was wonderful. And unfortunately, he's passed away now, but he was a little bit older than me, but not much. He was in a few years ahead of me at the school. But he was a very nice, very, very generous, because he supplied me with many, many leads of manufacturers and so on. No, I couldn't have done it without him. Well, actually, I probably wouldn't have done it anyway, to be honest. It was because I talked to Tony at the time, and I said, what I'm thinking of doing is opening a gallery in Broadstairs. Tony, what do you think? Great idea, he said. Let me know what you need, and I'll give you all the intros.
Oh, that's
There
lovely.
you go.
Lovely. Thank you, Tony. There's a lot of people out there that would that are very grateful to him.
He was also, incidentally, a very good artist, and he was known in the area, probably only in the area in sort of North Kent. But I remember one of the pictures he did, Rochester, Rochester Castle and Rochester Cathedral from the other side of the river. That was a very famous picture that he did, and he did a couple of local Gravesend scenes as well on the river. He was a great river man. So
Lovely.
I remember him with fondness.
Oh, that's lovely. Lovely. What a nice note to end this podcast with. Thank you so much for everyone that sent in the questions. Obviously, if you have anything you'd like us to discuss, then please always get in touch with us and we'll talk about it on a future show. Next week, we're going to talk about a picture that you've started already, Dad, the flowers. We mentioned it last week. You've made a head start on it, so we will talk about that and show everyone next week. There is a new class up on the website. I'll just pop it on screen now so that you can see. It's the Husky that you did with 4 Faber-Castell pastel pencils, not the shadow pencil range of 229, 250, 101, 270. This is Faber-Castell only, same as the Dalmatian that you did as well. You did the Dalmatian with the same 4 pencils. So nice, simple colour palette to work from. A good few hours this class, and it is up on the website now for people to give it a try. So let us know what you think and how you get on with that one. Excellent. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for this week. So thank you, Dad, and thanks everyone for listening. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
Enjoy your
your
week.
week.